Welcome back to today's episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Montgomery from Forest City PD, 39 years total in law enforcement. Welcome to the show, Chief Montgomery. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Okay,
Okay.
so does it feel like 39 years or does time fly when you're having fun?
Time flies. It sure does, especially the last few years. And I could have retired a long time ago. I like what I'm doing, so I'm going to stick it out. State law is that I have to retire next year because I've reached the age limit. So I'm just going to hang it out another year, and it will go fast. So yes, it's gone
Yeah.
fast.
What do you think is the secret to still loving your career almost 40 years later?
Well, you gotta like what you do. I mean, I like working with people in general. I like helping people, solving problems. I like mentoring the younger officers, that type of thing. So yeah,
Do you feel like a part of leadership is succession planning and bringing up the next generation?
yes, yeah, for sure. Some of the we just hired a female. She graduates from the academy here in a couple of weeks, and it's just how young she is. But she is a great officer. She's gonna be a great officer and a leader someday. So yeah,
I love that. I love that you
yeah,
can identify even early in their career, they haven't even graduated academy yet, and you're like, I know that they're going to be a great leader one day. Seeing
yes,
potential in people and then being able to facilitate the necessary resources to get them there.
yes. That doesn't always happen, but most of the time it does.
Yeah.
Uh, but most of the time, yeah, like I said, most of the time it does happen that way. So
Yeah. I
um,
love it.
smaller departments, so it makes it easier too. Um, her, for example, she went to college here. So yeah, I mean, we knew her a little bit when she was in college. She played soccer. But yeah, so looking forward to her to being done and starting here in a few weeks.
Love it. What
Yeah.
is your leadership philosophy? What do you think it takes to be a good leader?
You definitely got to lead by example. That's my number one. Um, I've been out there for 39 years. I started out as a patrolman, worked my way up, and you have to lead by example. You have to set the example. Um, you got to be a good listener. But the chief that hired me is probably one of the best listeners I've ever had or ever met. Very good listener. So, and that's huge, is to be a good listener. So,
Do you think that there's a difference between hearing and listening?
oh yeah, big difference.
Me too.
Oh yeah, people hear me all the time, but they don't listen. So you know how that is. But sure, and I've done the same thing myself too. But we all have. But there's a huge difference in that.
Well, I don't think any of us are perfect, and anyone who claims to be perfect, I'm a little weary of because I feel like we should all have some sort of self-assessment to understand, where we do things really well and maybe our opportunities for improvement. But um, I don't think there's anyone I've met personally who hasn't had an experience, and usually it's with like, a romantic partner where it's like you're hearing me, but you're not listening to me. And
Right.
everyone
Yeah.
wants to
Right.
feel like
Yep.
they're being listened to. Everyone wants to feel
Yep.
like what they say matters.
Yep. Sure does. Right.
How do you think leaders can continue to have that self assessment and can continue to learn and evolve even once they've hit some of those pinnacles in their career?
Well, they just got to continue doing what they're doing. Obviously, they reached that pinnacle for a good reason. They were chosen uh, for that role. So just keep doing what they're doing. Um, like I said, my biggest one is lead by example and continue that, and to teach my subordinates the same thing. And I got two lieutenants that are my supervisors to do a great job of that. And yes,
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, I've had to learn a lot of things the hard way. But throughout my career, I thought that when I would get opportunities, promotions or opportunities within my career, that meant that I had to be perfect and I had to know it all. And I later understood that we're never ever going to be that way. And so, how can we continue to try to improve ourselves even when we're in those pinnacles of our career? And how can we stay humble and remember where we came from and also continue to strive to learn and understand that you never really arrive? You know, it's not a
Right.
destination, that you should always be along for the journey to improvement. But I, as a young person, thought like, okay, when you make it to the top, that means that you know everything. And then when
Right.
you reach the top, you're like, I don't know anything. You know, like I know some stuff, but I don't know everything. That's for sure.
Right. No, you can definitely young. I learn from the younger people all the time, my kids, people I work with, other officers. Yeah, I never stop learning. I mean, um, yeah,
I love that you said you continue to learn even from the younger officers. And I think that we have to remember that everyone in our life has value and has something to bring to the table. Even if they don't maybe have as much life experience or work experience, they still have value and you can still learn from them. And I think we forget that. I think sometimes we dismiss people, you know, based on their level of experience or their life experience. And we don't understand that they have different perspectives and they have different experiences that they can bring to the table and we can learn from everyone.
right. That's very true. Yes.
I think that's hard for people, you know, especially when I start to see like the younger generation come in, there's maybe a little intimidation factor of, you know, the young people coming for your job or, you know, whatever. And
Right.
so it's hard to understand that, like, yeah, we have been doing this for a while. I actually heard something recently that I thought was really interesting. They said, the length of time that you do something is important. You know, obviously there's experience that comes with time, but you can also waste time. And so just because you've been doing something for a really long time doesn't necessarily always mean that you've taken advantage of all that time. And so you have these young people that maybe have less time, but they're like, you know, hitting the ground running and they're not wasting any time at all. And sometimes we discount them because they have fewer time, but did they use the time better? I don't know.
Right. You're right. That's
What is the biggest lesson that you've learned as a leader? So, the biggest leadership lesson that you've learned?
the biggest lesson I've learned. It's just being patient.
Mm,
Um, Sometimes I'm not always patient, and you get, with a department our size, sometimes it's hard not to micromanage. So I try not to do that. And the closer I get to retirement, and it's easier to do that. Just to let my two supervisors do that, which they do a great job of. Um, so yeah, probably patience, I'm guessing. And like I said, trying not to micromanage. But
yeah.
I just talking to the sheriff of the neighboring county the other day about this, and I had the same thoughts. He does, he's got I think seven, eight deputies, and when we see each other every day and you see maybe a mistake they made, you want to correct it. It's hard not to, hey, try this way. I don't. My lieutenants are not always around, so I don't want to. Sometimes they'll say, "Hey, talk to this person about that," and that's what you kind of want to do, but it's hard to walk away from something and say, "Hey, try this next time." I don't really see that micromanaging, but it's just kind of how it is in a smaller department. You get to a bigger department where a chief might not even know a lot of his officers, and so it's pretty easy to do that.
Yeah.
Department this size,
I think it's there's such a fine line, right? Like you want people to feel empowered and you want them to have ownership over what they're doing. And in some ways, you know, you kind of want people to make small mistakes, you know, so that they can learn from those things. But at the same time, you don't want to neglect them and make them feel like they don't have the resource if they need it. And I was just having this conversation with my team because I have someone who I work really closely with. And I think there's a fine line between me like breathing over their neck and then me
right?
also providing opportunities for training and us feeling disconnected versus connected. And so it's hard to find that balance. But I also would imagine that each person is different. You know, some people want more of that like hands on, they want
Like,
you to like show them everything all the time. And there's other people who are like, hey, like, give me some space, And so I think that that's a part of leadership too, is understanding how people operate and what motivates them, what fuels them, and then how can you show up for them in a way that works for them.
Right. And we have that here. We have some guys that will, do stuff and which is fine and make a lot of big mistakes. And you have others that, you know, ask a lot of questions, which is fine too. But yeah, I understand what you're saying for
Yeah.
sure. So,
Yeah, I think it's hard. I think when you have different personalities, it's hard to, because you can't have a one size fits all approach, right? You have to show
right,
up for everyone in a way that makes sense for them. And so it takes a lot of what you said, patience, but
right.
also listening and understanding. And you have to evolve, yourself as a person that can, make sure that you're providing the attention that everyone needs.
Yes. You're
When it comes to wellness, one of the things that you said that I think stuck out to me was the importance of just talking about it, having conversations and making sure that, it's a part of, the conversation and a part of the culture. How have you made it so that there is an open dialogue and conversation about wellness so that people know that it's okay?
you're talking about physical fitness, wellness, or
Yeah, I think
just
it's multidimensional. So any
yeah.
aspect of wellness, just being able to talk about it.
Yeah, that's not been a problem here. Um, we have a lot of officers, younger myself, and the subject of wellness doesn't come up, but we have officers here that do take it seriously, and it does affect the job. Um, if you're um, in decent shape, workout, it's definitely going to make a big impact on your decisions. You show up for work tired all the time, and you're sitting there with a monster or something like that, energy drink type of thing, and that does no good for anybody. But we don't have that a lot here. I talk to guys every once in a while about that type of thing, and we had one officer here that smoked, and he recently quit. So um, now uh, I don't know, he's got to be feeling better. I mean, who won? So, but yeah, it's just that type of thing. I guess we talk about.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because I used to smoke a pack of cigarettes a day when I was younger. I drank in excess. I ate unhealthy food. Like I did all the things wrong. I was the poster child for what not to do when it comes to wellness when I was younger. And I think we're very adaptable as human beings. And so I don't think we realize sometimes how bad we actually feel until we have the opposite of it. We don't understand, to your point of what you said about, the individual who was a smoker and now isn't. You're like, I would imagine he feels better, but you don't realize how bad you feel until you stop. And then you're like, wow, I can't believe I
Right.
lived that way for that long,
Yeah.
and
Right.
because we're so adaptable to whatever environment we're in. And so I do think it's important to have the education and awareness around things that are healthy. How can we adapt those to each individual person? I also think it's important to meet people where they are. I am not a fan of telling people don't do this because I find as soon as I say don't do this, there's a wall of defense and they're like, who are you to tell me what not to do? And then you never make any forward progress, especially when it comes to caffeine. Caffeine is one of the biggest things that people are just not at all willing to give up. They're like, do not take away my coffee, do not take away my energy drinks. And so how can we meet people where they are so that they understand, hey, here's the reason why we're trying to bring more awareness around healthier options. Here's why this is maybe not the best choice. And then instead of telling someone, hey, don't do this, it's like, how can we maybe do healthier swaps for something? Maybe instead of this, we try this. Or how about instead of 4, we do 3? And then
Mhm.
maybe we can do 2. Instead of smoking a pack of cigarettes, can we do like a 3/4 pack and then
Yeah.
maybe a half a pack? And then we can start to kind of work within that. And so that has been what I found to be successful is really having those one-on-one conversations and understanding, where people are, how can we meet them where they are, and then how can we take baby steps, towards a healthier path rather than a don't drink your energy drink because people are
Right,
going to throw you out the door as soon as you do that.
right, right. And personally, I cut out sugar on my diet back in September. And it's amazing how much weight I dropped. I just kind of did a cold turkey, and I probably have the biggest sweet tooth of anybody around, especially in this department. And I just quit cold turkey. And I work out probably about 8 hours a week, if not more, probably about 10 with running and everything. But I tell you what, just cutting sugar out of my diet, the recovery from my workouts, I'm never sore anymore. I sleep better. Every once in a while I'll cheat, I mean, you know, uh, you only live one, you only live once. So it's like, every once in a while I'll have something, but I don't crave it like I used to. And like you said, those kind of those baby steps or whatever, instead of eating a big candy bar, I might have just a little piece of, the real tiny candy bars, just a couple of those. And I was satisfied like I was eating a big candy bar. So,
Yeah.
that made a huge difference for me. And like I said, just the recovery, you don't realize how bad sugar can be.
Yeah.
And you got people that drink regular Mountain Dew all the time, and some of those have just 39 grams of sugar in a can or something like that. It's like you
Hmm.
don't realize what you're doing to yourself by drinking that stuff. So,
I am
um,
not exaggerating when I say this. My dad drinks 7 Dr. Peppers a day and 0 water because he says that there's water in the Dr. Pepper.
I've heard that. Yes,
So,
I've heard that
um,
too. But yeah,
there was a study that came out that was talking about how bad sugar is, and especially refined sugars. Of course, there's natural sugars that you'll see in
right,
fruits, and but they said that quitting sugar or stopping sugar is as hard as quitting a hardcore narcotic. It's like the same type of addiction level. And there was one study that said that in some cases, sugar is harder to quit than some of the hardcore narcotics, and addictions that people have to narcotics, which I think is crazy.
right,
And sugar is everywhere. You
right,
can't get away from it. Every grocery store, everything. So it's very difficult. It's very similar to alcohol in the sense that, like, you walk around and it's just readily available. So it takes an immense amount of self-discipline to cut back on that. I too I was always the don't take my coffee away from me. I was a 4 cup of coffee a day. I have an espresso machine. I would just click that button all day long and loved it. And I started, there were a few reasons why I wanted to stop, but there were a couple times where I started feeling like almost like these like chest pains, and I was like, am I just over caffeinating myself and over stress? And I like to think that I'm super healthy and I, take care of myself. But it was the one vice, I guess, that I was like, yeah, like this is fine. And I stopped drinking coffee over a little over 2 months ago. And I went through like withdrawals. I felt like I had the flu. I was sweating, like almost feverish for probably a week and a half. I felt terrible. And I never ever thought that I would have enough energy naturally to get through a day. And here we are. So,
right, right.
I can totally live without it, but I think we convince ourselves sometimes that we can't live without some of these things.
Yeah, I have coffee every morning. I'll have maybe a couple cups, and that's all I have. But when I don't have coffee, and I don't feel like I lack that much energy either without drinking. So I don't. I drink it probably for the taste. I don't get a real buzz out of coffee. I just drink it, but maybe I do and just don't realize it. But I feel the same pretty much when I don't. Maybe it get a little crabbier if I don't have it, but um, yeah, that's huge too, caffeine. But um, at my age, I'm a little, and I'll still drink it, but I don't overindulge in anything anymore with the sugar, alcohol. I never did with alcohol anyway, but with sugar and caffeine, I don't like that feeling, that caffeine feeling if you drink too much. Your heart,
Yeah.
racing, pounding, like you said. And it's like, I don't like that feeling. So,
Yeah.
I want to stop with the caffeine thing. And very rare through the day. I know I don't drink enough water, but very rare do I drink anything with caffeine in it. So,
Yeah.
uh,
I'm a really big believer in everything in moderation. Like we're never
right?
ever going to be perfect at anything for you to be like, yeah, every once in a while I do this, or, every once in a while I have, a candy bar and it's small. I think we
Yep.
have to understand that, there are I'll say like pleasures in life, where, every once in a while having a piece of cake. I mean, maybe it's
Yep.
your kid's birthday or grandkid's birthday or something. Like, I have no problem with that. I think that when we just take a look at our habits, do we have discipline? Do we have consistent habits? Are we trying to be as healthy as we can? Do we have awareness around it? And at the end of the day, if you eat a candy bar or, a piece of cake, it's not going to be the end of everything.
Right.
But I think when we start to become addicted to certain things, or we're using certain um, vices as coping mechanisms, to, maybe feel better or avoid a certain situation, I think that's when we have to start to understand, like, is this a problem or not? Is it healthy or is it unhealthy?
Right. Right. Well, I used to go home for lunch some days before I, spend it before I started eliminating sugar, and sometimes I'd like have a piece of cake or something for lunch, and I go, I got to stop doing this. And I said I quit cold turkey, and it was not hard for me for some reason. And I've always had a sweet tooth ever since I've been younger. And the people around here in the department know my obsession with cake. It's
Yeah.
kind of a joke around here, but I'll never give that up. But I don't eat it every day either. So, like you said, moderation and birthdays and that type of thing, and you gotta live. So,
I just
um,
had, I wouldn't say it was an argument. It was a conversation, because I was just talking to my fiance the other day about this. And I used to say, if you can eat it with coffee, it's okay. So if it's a piece of cake, but it's with coffee, like if it's breakfast, all breakfast foods have sugar. I used to say, like, it's okay, which is kind of a joke. But I was asking him, I was like, can we get a piece of cake? I was actually asking him yesterday because there's this bakery that we really like and they're only open Thursday through Sunday. And I was like, can we go there? And he was like, no, because he's also trying to cut down sugar. He has a big sweet tooth. And he was like, no, we can't have it. And I'm like, have you had any other sweets recently? And he goes, no, I haven't. And I was like, wait, didn't you have pancakes the other day for breakfast? And he goes, yeah, but that
it's
was breakfast. And I'm like, pancake.
yeah,
It's in the name. It's a cake. It's pancake.
right,
And he was like, no, it doesn't count. And I'm like, that counts. And so we were having an argument because he was telling me I can't have cake. And I'm like, you had cake for breakfast. So,
right,
but again, I think, if you have it every once in a while, like to me, it's like you said, you have to live, you have to enjoy your life,
yep, yep,
and I think the fact that we're having this conversation means that there's an awareness around health. And I think that's the most important part is, are we aware of our habits? Are we aware of our daily decisions? And, when we start to see some of those things come out of balance, do we have the discipline to be able to reel those things back? Everyone knows if you're drinking 3 energy drinks or 4 energy drinks in a day, not the best. There's
right,
tons of chemicals and sugar. It's really hard on your heart. And then we compound that with stress and adrenaline and all the things. And now we start to see younger people, having heart issues or cardiac arrest. And so when we know these things, we can do better. But if we don't know better, we can't do better. And so I appreciate you coming on here and having a conversation about it and having that own awareness in your life as a leader so that you can set the example for other people within your organization to also have that same self-awareness.
okay, sure. Um, yeah, it's you know, like going back to the sugar thing. It's just I don't know if that was a problem in working out that I still have. I didn't eat. I don't eat sugar. I never did before I worked out. Before I quit cold turkey, but it's got to be one reason why I feel so good when I'm done working out. Because sometimes you just, at my age, you just feel like, oh, I can't get out of the chair. This guy been working out. I need help getting out of the chair. There, it wasn't that bad, but you know what I'm saying. And it's like, yeah, if that's what caused it, I'm gonna stop. you know, I'm going to keep doing this. And it's been pretty easy. Like I said, every once in a while I get a cheat day, but when I go and work out and run on a treadmill or run on a track or do a 5K and I'm not sore, it's like I'm not going to reward myself with something sweet like I used to because, so it's been easy. It was kind of surprising that it was that easy for me to do that. And like I said, I know smokers that it's just they can't give it up. And it's like, well, take a little steps, like you said, smoke half of the cigarette or a quarter of it, and just
Mhm.
I've seen him. Like I said, we have an officer here that quit, and I don't know how he did it, but I think it was pretty much cold turkey. And
Mhm.
people can do it. It's all in mind. It's all in mind. It's in your head. But yeah, I guess that's my 2 cents worth of that.
Yeah, dependencies are hard. I think a lot of the conversations I have that are successful is, because there are a lot of people who aren't willing to do things for themselves.
Right,
But they're willing to do it for other people. And so when we have that conversation of like, okay, well, what's the goal?
right,
Do you want to retire and, be able to run around with your grandkids and,
right.
get out of your chair and move and,
Yep,
continue to run 5Ks and, have
yep,
an active retirement? Is that the goal? Is your goal to be there for your kids? My cousin quit smoking cold turkey after I think it was like, no, yeah, probably like 15 years of smoking because she wanted to start a family. And she was like, I don't want to be smoking around my kids, And
right,
so I think that sometimes we have to look outside of ourselves because we're really bad at taking care of ourselves and we're not always motivated to do things for us. But, are you motivated to be here longer for your kids and grandkids? Maybe that's a good reason to, start prioritizing some of these
yeah,
things, and I think you're right. I think there's physical dependencies. There's also, mindset and I think it's hard. It is hard, but I think it's totally possible. We see it time and time again. That's totally possible to start making different choices and, seeking out resources that are going to help you to get there. And, if you're not willing to do it for you, who are you willing to do it for?
right. Well, it's so easy to, as far as eating right and stuff, it's so easy, especially in the bigger cities, to grab something from McDonald's or fast food. And it seems like more and more of those type of stores are popping up all the time. And
Mhm.
there's usually nothing good in those, whatever they serve. Um, and it just makes it easy. People are in such a hurry anymore. They take time to, you know, make a sandwich before, take that to work and eat that, or that type of thing. It's so easy. I suppose in a bigger city, walk down the block and go to or a Burger King or something like that, or McDonald's, or Taco John's or whatever. And it's good every once in a while, but it's too easy to do that. Drive through on your way home from somewhere and grab something instead of waiting to get home and make something for yourself.
Yeah.
That's decent.
I think it comes down to discipline.
Yeah,
Are we disciplined? Are we um, effectively using our time? Can we meal prep at home? Are we making sure we're prepared with, enough sustenance throughout the day so that we don't feel like we have to go to those places? But if we do go to those places, can we make healthier choices at those places? There are plenty of things that you can do that are healthier, maybe not super healthy, but healthier, than getting, a fried sandwich or french fries or whatever. There's options for swaps, but I think it comes down to discipline, you know,
right.
and we build confidence through discipline. The more disciplined you are, the more confident you are that you can do the things, and then that compounds over time. So I agree with you. I think it's hard and things are instant gratification. But I would argue that it probably costs less money and takes less time to, put together a sandwich in the morning or whatever it
Yep.
is, your meal prep in the morning than it is to sit through a drive through and, and get
Oh,
something
sure,
like that.
sure.
So
Right, right.
my final question for you is for that younger generation, what words of wisdom would you share with them that you wish you would have known when you were younger?
Well, obviously made mistakes in my life, but I think the biggest one I tell kids is education. Get as much education as you can. Um, I help out with a college here in Forest City, doing mock interviews. Usually it's about this time of the year. Um, where I sit down with somebody and if they're interested in law enforcement, we'll do mock interviews with them. And I don't ask the questions that I'm giving. I go through a few questions, but I'll say, I'll just explain this is how you answer this. This is how you do that. But my biggest thing is, what do they always say, what do you recommend? I said, education's the number one. Get as much as you can. If you got to work your way through college, do it. I see a lot of that. Um, and That's the biggest one. Do what you want to do, what makes you happy. I'm lucky I've had a job that I liked for the last going on 40 years. So I'm lucky. I never, there's been times where, hey, do I still want to do this and type of thing. But I've been lucky that I have a job that I like because before I started here, I had a job that I didn't really want to go to. I had to, but I didn't want to. And what a difference that makes. So, it might take a few jobs to figure out what you really want, but go for it. If that's what you want to do. Yeah, I don't career wise, you pick a career and just go for it. Do your best. I don't care what you do, just do your best. I don't care if it's working at a convenience store or being an attorney, whatever you like it, make ends meet, however, do what you want to do. Just do your best.
Thank you. Thank you so
Yep.
much for coming on here today. I really appreciate your time.
Well, I appreciate having me.
Of course.
All
I'll
right.
talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks.